There is a strange kind of heartbreak that doesn't make sense. You know he wasn't good for you. Or maybe she wasn't. You remember the arguments. The disappointment. The moments when being with that person made you feel smaller, more anxious, or less like yourself. You know why it ended. And yet, you still miss that person. Sometimes months later. Sometimes years later. And that's the part nobody prepares you for. Because if someone was wrong for you, shouldn't your brain simply let that person go? Not necessarily. Sometimes the person you know you shouldn't return to can be the person your mind keeps returning to. And that doesn't automatically mean you still love him. It doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. And it definitely doesn't mean you should go back. It may mean your brain is trying to process something that was never as simple as, I loved that person, and then I stopped. Because relationships don't live only in your memories. They become patterns inside your mind. Your routines. Your expectations. Your emotional associations. And when the relationship disappears, your brain doesn't instantly delete all of that. It has to learn how to live without it. 1. You may be missing the pattern, not the person. Think about how much of a relationship becomes automatic. The morning message. The phone call at night. Knowing who you would tell something to. Knowing where you would go on a weekend. Even the arguments can become predictable. Your brain gets used to expecting another person to be there. So when that person is gone, you're not only losing a person. You're losing a pattern. And the brain doesn't always distinguish between this was good for me and this was familiar to me. Familiarity can feel strangely comforting, even when the relationship itself wasn't. That's why you can miss someone and still know that person was wrong for you. You're not necessarily craving the relationship. You may be craving the familiarity that came with it. And after 50, this can become even more complicated. Because your life may already be deeply structured. Your routines. Your home. Your social circle. Your memories. The longer someone has been part of that structure, the more noticeable their absence can become. So sometimes what feels like missing that person is actually missing the life pattern that existed around him or her. 2. Your brain remembers the emotional highs. There's another reason this happens. Relationships aren't made entirely of bad moments. Even unhealthy relationships can contain incredibly good moments. A perfect evening. A meaningful conversation. A moment when he finally understood you. Or a moment when she made you feel completely loved. And those moments can become emotionally powerful memories. Especially when good moments were unpredictable. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, a pattern studied extensively in behavioral psychology, where unpredictable rewards can make a behavior surprisingly persistent. And this can happen in relationships too. A partner who sometimes gives you incredible affection, but other times pulls away, can create a powerful emotional cycle. You don't just remember the pain. You remember the relief that came after the pain. The reunion after the distance. The affection after the rejection. And sometimes, you don't miss the relationship. You miss the emotional high you occasionally experienced inside it. That's a very different thing. 3. Your brain edits the story. Here's something else your mind does. It edits. When you're living inside a difficult relationship, you experience everything at once. The good. The bad. The annoying little habits. The arguments. The silence. The affection. The disappointment. But after the relationship ends, memory doesn't always preserve the whole story equally. Sometimes it creates a highlight reel. A song. A photograph. A vacation. A particular smell. A place you visited together. And suddenly, your brain gives you the beautiful version. Not the complete version. The beautiful version. This is why nostalgia can be dangerous. Not because remembering good things is bad, but because nostalgia can remove context. You remember how he made you feel on his best day, while temporarily forgetting how you felt on his worst days. Or you remember how she looked at you during the happiest moments, while forgetting how lonely you felt during the difficult ones. And that distinction matters. Because missing a memory isn't the same as wanting the relationship back. 4. You may be grieving the future you imagined. This one is deeper. Sometimes you're not actually grieving the person. You're grieving the future you thought you would have with that person. The house you imagined. The trips you planned. Growing older together. Having someone beside you during ordinary mornings. You weren't only attached to who he was. You may have been attached to who you believed he could become. Or who you believed the two of you could become together. And when the relationship ends, that imagined future disappears too. That's a different kind of grief. And it can be especially powerful later in life. Because the older we become, the more clearly we understand that time matters. There may be fewer years ahead than behind. So starting again can feel much bigger than simply meeting someone new. You're not just asking, "Can I love someone again?" You're asking, "Do I really want to start this entire chapter over?" And sometimes the mind turns that uncertainty into nostalgia. It reaches backward because the future suddenly feels unfamiliar. But familiar doesn't always mean better. Sometimes it simply means known. 5. Missing someone doesn't mean you should return. This may be the most important distinction in the entire video. You can miss him and still choose not to go back. You can love her and understand that the relationship wasn't healthy for you. You can remember beautiful moments without pretending the painful ones never happened. And you can feel lonely without making loneliness the reason you return. Feelings are information. They aren't always instructions. Your brain can tell you, "I miss him." That doesn't automatically mean, "I need him." Your heart can say, "I still care about her." That doesn't automatically mean, "She belongs in my future." Those are completely different statements. And learning to separate them is one of the most important parts of emotional maturity. 6. Sometimes you miss who you were. But this is different from missing the routine. Sometimes, you aren't missing the relationship at all. You're missing who you were when you were in it. Maybe you were more adventurous, more hopeful, more spontaneous. Maybe you traveled more, laughed more, dressed differently, had different dreams. When the relationship ended, you may have lost more than a partner. You may have lost access to a version of yourself. And your brain can attach that version of you to the person who was there at the time. So when you think about him, you may actually be remembering yourself. Or when you remember her, you may be remembering who you were when she was part of your life. That's why sometimes the real healing isn't finding another person. It's finding the parts of yourself you thought you lost. 7. The goal isn't to stop missing them. We often think healing means reaching the point where we feel absolutely nothing. No memories. No sadness. No nostalgia. No curiosity. But maybe that's not the goal. Maybe healing is being able to remember someone without needing that person back. To remember the good without rewriting the bad. To feel the sadness without letting it control your decisions. And eventually, to understand something very important. You can miss a person and still move forward. You can appreciate what he meant to you without giving him access to your future. You can appreciate what she meant to you without reopening a chapter that needed to end. Because sometimes the person you miss isn't the person you need. Sometimes you're missing a memory. Sometimes you're missing a routine. Sometimes you're missing a version of yourself. Sometimes you're grieving a future that never happened. And sometimes you're simply experiencing what it feels like when something familiar is no longer there. So if you've ever looked back at someone and thought, I know he was wrong for me, so why do I still miss him? Or, I know she was wrong for me, so why do I still think about her? Maybe the answer isn't that your heart is confused. Maybe your brain is simply remembering what your life used to feel like. And that's okay. You don't have to erase the memory. You just have to stop confusing the memory with the future. Because moving on doesn't always mean forgetting someone. Sometimes it means remembering that person. And choosing yourself anyway.